The Democrats are trying to redistrict Staten Island Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis out of office. You can bet she's got some strong views about that. So, court hearing, they want to redistrict, they want to change your district so that you represent, now I want to make sure I get this right, Staten Island and the Lower East Side. How does that make sense?
Well, it doesn't make sense, but this is the Democrats' latest attempt to try to redraw our map, to tilt the scales, so a Republican can never win this, not only this district, but ensure that a Republican could never be elected to represent our city in Washington again. And so, you know, we've been through this, obviously, twice before, where we've had these legal battles over the map. In 2022, a special independent master appointed by the court drew our lines. And in 2024, the governor, after they waged a lawsuit, they had an opportunity to redraw the maps, and they signed the current maps into law. And here comes this Washington law firm looking to redraw the map. And it's really ludicrous, and it's an insult to the people of Staten Island, Southern Brooklyn, who had a Democrat, by the way, Max Rose, who represented them, and they fired this individual. So they had a choice here between a Republican and Democrat, and they decided they didn't want the Democrat representing them anymore. And here comes this Washington firm saying they don't care about the will of the voter. They're going to set it up so a Republican can never win, and it'll always be one-party rule.
But see, they're trying to argue that this is important for the representation of Black and Latino voters. What do you say to that argument?
Well, look, as a Latina myself, being I'm half Cuban, I think it's ludicrous. And the reason it's ludicrous is because their solution is not to add more Latinos or African Americans to the district. Their proposed map would actually add more white liberals in lower Manhattan to the district.
So how can that hold up if there was a challenge?
Well, that's the question we have, and we'll see what the judge decides to do. But I will say this, as the first Hispanic to represent this district in Washington, to now for these guys to come in and claim that somehow it disenfranchises minorities simply because I'm a Republican Hispanic and not a Democrat, I think it's very insulting, and it certainly is offensive, not to me personally, but you know, it's not about me, it's about the voters who had their day to vote, and they made their voices very clear, and here comes the Democrats trying to erase their voice.
But this case was assigned to a judge, a Democratic judge who had worked as a counsel to Governor Kathy Hochul, who has made no secret of the fact that she wants your seat. So how is that going to stand up if he rules against you?
Look, I think that if he just interprets the law, it's very clear that the map should stay the same. First of all, the law that they were claiming or citing in this lawsuit doesn't even apply to state legislative or congressional districts. That's number one. Number two, the fact that their remedy is to add more white liberals, not minorities, really shows that this is truly about just diluting the voice of the people. And so I think that if we have to, and I believe that we should be able to win in this first round of court if the judge is interpreting the law as it is. But if we have to, we will fight this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary. And I believe we will prevail in the end of the day. But we will fight this tooth and nail each and every step of the way, because it is about preserving our elections. When Democrats talk about democracy, right, and you know, how can they say they're the defenders of democracy and then at the same time try to change these maps? You can never have another competitive election in the city of New York, because I'm the only competitive seat currently in the city of New York, and I'm the only one that gives our city bipartisan representation, which is so incredibly important, especially with President Trump there. You need to have someone who has a relationship to fight for New York City. I was the one who got $100 million restored in counterterrorism fund when the Department of Homeland Security attempted to cut that funding. I was the one who ensured that we got those doctors that work at the World Trade Health Center programs, Zadroga funded, back hired when they were doged by Elon Musk. Like, I've been out there fighting for New York City to deliver critical NYPD funding, transportation infrastructure funding, money for our hospitals, our education system, and I'm the only one that's in the majority right now. And that's important to have that type of representation in Washington. I think New York City is better off because we have bipartisan representation.
I think the law firm that's bringing the suit would argue that it's in response to the actions of some red states to redraw their lines to redistrict Democrats out of their seats. How do you feel about that?
Well, I've been very critical of those efforts as well. And I've said all along, I don't care whether it's Republicans or Democrats doing it. Political gerrymandering is wrong because it silences the voters. It takes away their voice. And if you're going to set up a system where you never have an incumbent really challenged, right? It's an incumbent protection program then at that point. It is not competitive seats where people can actually hold their representative accountable. In my district, remember, it's not even leaning, even though I won this district now, this will be my third, I run it 3 times already, but it's Republican minority district. We have 40% Democrats in this district and 27% Republicans and conservative combined, with the remainders being third party and independents. And so I would say that even with they already have the registration advantage. And I won this district with a significant margin. And I would just say that, again, trying to take away the choice of the voters is never right, whether Republicans or Democrats do it.
But time is of the essence. This is an election in November, and if the judge rules against you and you have to go to the appellate division and then to the Supreme Court, this could take time. And how will you be able to do this in time to wage a campaign?
Well, we're working with our attorneys now to make sure that we use every legal option at our disposal to protect the people of Staten Island and Brooklyn and make sure that their voices aren't undone here. We're gonna do what we have to do legally in the court of law to make the case that these maps should stay as they are. And by the way, there shouldn't be any mid-decade redistricting. Right? Redistricting is supposed to be an exercise that's done every 10 years after the census to keep up with pace with the population. So this idea that now this is the 3rd time potentially that my congressional map can change is really ludicrous.
So you said that you fight for the rights of New Yorkers. President Trump in the last week has threatened to take away money from New York and New York City because of sanctuary cities. Are you going to be able to do anything about that?
Well, I've already spoken to the White House about this. I've spoken with the Speaker of the House about this. I've made it very clear publicly that I will not support any efforts to just strip New York City of precious tax dollars that we, the taxpayers, had paid into. We deserve to see that money be returned to us. What I have said is, look, if we're going to strategically ensure that we're not funding a socialist agenda, we're not going to give Mamdani money to seize the means of production or to have government-run supermarkets or to take over housing to turn them into communes. These are all 3 things, by the way, that were part of his campaign. I've said we're not going to do that. However, I have to make sure that the federal government is not going to punish New York City and take away money for infrastructure and for policing and for our health care and things that are critically important that we pay into the system and deserve to have like every other state in the country. And so I've made that very clear, and I've actually gone after my own colleagues in my own party when they've proposed similar ideas. So I have no problem speaking out against this idea that he has, and we're going to have to ensure that we protect New York City.
And well, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversations continue right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. We are back with Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, and so there's this question. How do you prevent money that comes to New York City from the mayor, from being spent on whatever the mayor wants to spend it on? I mean, if federal come to New York, he could spend it on anything he wants, right?
Well, I think there's a way we can put in certain parameters to safeguard this money. And as a matter of fact, a lot of grants that the city and state receive, for example, our NYPD receives certain funding for specific purposes. And I think we need to just keep an eye on that to make sure it's being utilized the right way. I think there is other types of leverage, whether it be, there's going to be permits and approvals that they're going to need from the federal government that we can use to ensure that he's doing this the right way. I am concerned about Mayor Mamdani misspending tax dollars. So we've seen it happen with previous mayor and the mayor certainly before that, Bill de Blasio, and we see it happening on the state level as well. So there does need to be accountability measures put in place holding these mayors and these governors accountable. But for the president to say that he will strip all federal funding beginning February 1st, I have a real problem with that, and I'm still trying to get clarification because I've confronted the White House about this, and I've asked what exactly does that mean. If it's going to be targeted and specific to ensure that illegal immigrants are not benefiting from these funds, or that it's not going to go for one of these socialist programs that the people really don't agree with, that's one thing. But I have to ensure that my NYPD, our schools, our hospitals, our transportation infrastructure projects are funded, which is, again, a reason why it's so important that we have bipartisan representation in Washington, because as the only Republican, I have to be there in the majority to convince my colleagues why this is such a bad idea.
So we have a situation where right now it seems that the mayor has something of a honeymoon period. How long do you think that's going to last?
Quite frankly, I think it's over already.
It's over?
Just the fact that the president talked about stripping funding beginning February 1st makes me believe that that honeymoon is over. But we shall see. We shall see. Hopefully they can still find some common ground. I think it's critically important that city government and federal government communicate and that they can work together where they can find common ground. And so I'd hate to see this type of war over funding start so easily. But certainly I'm gonna fight for our city. I'm gonna fight for our taxpayers. Half the city rejected Mayor Mamdani, and they shouldn't be punished. They shouldn't be punished in losing critical money for the services that they rely on as citizens of New York.
One of the things you've been fighting for in Washington is for the establishment of a Women's History Museum. I wonder how that's going.
It's actually going pretty well. I think that we're going to be getting a vote out of committee soon. It could be as early as this upcoming week. We have about 225 sponsors of this legislation. It's broadly bipartisan. We have people all across the political spectrum who have added their names to be sponsors. The president has publicly supported the effort, and I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to get this done. And I think we'll hopefully be able to get this law done by Women's History Month. But I think it's in, look, we're more than half the population. The fact that we already don't have a museum dedicated to the pioneers and the trailblazers who have come before us, I think is disappointing. And I think many people are shocked that we don't have one. And so I'm hopeful that we'll see this through.
So this is an election year, as we know, for you and everybody else in Congress. And the midterms are always a time when there's a lot of change. I wonder, what role do you think the Democrats' argument about health care and the fact that the tax credits for Obamacare were not extended, how much of a role is that going to play in November 2026?
Well, look, this affects about 7% of the country. These tax credits were COVID era, so they were supposed to be just through the COVID pandemic. The Democrats had set the expiration date for December 31st, 2025. They have expired. And what it really highlights, I think, is the fact that the Affordable Care Act was never actually affordable. So we have to rein in the insurance companies. I think that's really the key here if we want to lower costs and make not only health insurance, but pharmaceuticals more affordable. The insurance companies have made roughly 230% more profit since the Affordable Care Act took effect. And premiums have gone up roughly 95% as a result of these insurance companies. And so I think that there's a real bipartisan solution here. I've sponsored a bill with my colleagues, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. We launched this initiative to try to provide a subsidy, but make sure that it's tied not to the insurance company, that's actually going to the people, in the sense that insurance companies have to meet certain parameters and be held accountable. That will, I think, go a long way. And the other thing is these pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, they're often owned by the insurance companies as well. They are the middlemen here that are really the reason why there's little transparency in drug costs and the reason why consumers are paying so much. There's a big effort right now, which is also bipartisan, to rein them in, hold them accountable, and require transparency and have some prohibitions in place. The fact that you have insurance companies that own these pharmacy benefit managers, as well as the pharmacies themselves, while dictating to the little small mom and pops how much they can be reimbursed for medication, it is becoming a monopoly system, and it's really the reason why these costs have skyrocketed. And President Trump came out with this week a plan to lower costs. I think he hits on a lot of important points. I think we could still go a little further, and I think hopefully we'll be able to do this in a bipartisan manner.
But the casual observer would say it's been very difficult to get bipartisanship in Washington. What's the magic sauce?
Well, we just passed a few appropriation bills this week that were bipartisan, and that I think was refreshing to see. And so if we can at least start with that funding of our government in a bipartisan way and avoid a shutdown come this end of the month, I think that sets a good tone. But I think this issue of health care, there's a lot of bipartisanship around it. You may not get the extremes, right? The people who want complete expiration of these tax credits versus those who just want to extend them without any reforms, knowing that it's a system in which the insurance companies are taking advantage of taxpayers at the expense of patients. What we're proposing here is a bipartisan solution which will get the vast majority of the middle of the membership in Congress, and that's enough to pass the bill. And really, that's the way it should be. I think you end up with better policy when the two sides kind of come together and try to figure it out. You get something that maybe everyone can live in, and I think sometimes that's the best solution.
I wanted to get your take on the governor's race here, because one of your fellow Congresswomen, Elise Stefanik, decided to drop out. Bruce Blakeman is alleged to be the next candidate, Republican candidate against Kathy Hochul. Your reaction, what do you think is going to happen?
I think Bruce is a great candidate because he has shown real results in Nassau. I mean, he's made it safer. He has made it more affordable in the sense that he has frozen property taxes. He respects the taxpayer. He has protected women in sports. He has made actually Nassau the safest county in America, according to U.S. World News Report. So I think these are significant things that he can run on, considering that affordability and public safety are probably the top two issues in the state of New York right now.
But this is a Democratic state, sort of.
It is.
So what are his chances, given the fact that he's running against a Democratic governor who has raised a lot of money?
Well, there's no doubt that it's an uphill battle for any Republican running in the city or the state of New York. But I still think Lee Zeldin came so close 4 years ago.
6 points.
And things have not gotten better. And so if people do want to change, they can't keep voting for the same one-party rule that we have in our state. Bruce would bring balance because the state legislature will maintain as a Democrat body. So if you have a Republican governor, again, you'll find more bipartisan solutions that will have to come about to bring things more to the center, which at the end of the day, I think New Yorkers do want that. I think they're not happy seeing the way New York has become so unaffordable, the way our budget has been so bloated, where we spend twice as much than the state of Florida, which has millions of more residents, and the costs in our state are substantial, which is why I was I fought really hard, and we did deliver SALT relief. The reason we needed SALT relief, state and local tax relief, which people will be able to utilize now when they file their taxes, we needed it because our state government has abused taxpayers and have abused property taxpayers. And so, these things that we've done on the federal level will mean nothing if our state government keeps increasing taxes. It's like we're giving a break and we're giving you money on one hand and they're taking it from the other.
Well, you've made no secret of the fact that you're no fan of the new mayor of the city of New York. How do you feel about the fact that Kathy Hochul, the governor of the state of New York, seems to have embraced him and some of his affordability agenda?
Yeah, I think this is a matter of self-preservation for her. I think she's so afraid of the radical left that she has moved more and more and more to the left. And actually, I think this is the reason Andrew Cuomo lost, really, is because he had spent his career trying to placate the radical left, and at the end, they were the ones who took him out. And so I think that she should be more in the center, and I think her true beliefs are actually more in the center, because when she was a congressperson from Erie County, she was much more conservative. But I think this is a matter of self-preservation. She's not putting the public interest first. She's putting her own personal ambitions and self-preservation.
Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, thank you for joining me, and thank you at home for joining us as well.